Welcome to the Integrate This EdTech podcast, the essential podcast for educators and tech enthusiasts. I'm Jeremy Mikla, and I'm joined by David Berner, your guides to the intersection of technology and education. As we explore the latest EdTech tools, tips, and trends, join us in creating dynamic tech-forward classrooms. Ready for today's digital learning adventure? Then let's dive in. David, let our viewers know what we have on tap for today's episode.
All right, today we're going to show how ChatGPT 4.0 has an explore option within their menu for paid users, and that allows users to create their own GPTs for a huge range of purposes. So we'll go over some of the ones that we've created, and we'll go over a little bit of how you start that process too and what that looks like. Okay, so when you're at ChatGPT, normally you would have, for most people, they're going to have ChatGPT 3.5. That's the free version. If you have the paid version, ChatGPT 4, you're going to be able to access this Explore option from the menu. And once you click on Explore, it kind of gives you a couple of categories here. The first one is my GPTs. We'll come back to that. The next is recently used, and then you have made by OpenAI. So there's a lot of GPTs here that get pulled into their plugin system, and so these can be accessed. These are either by ChatGPT or other creators, and so for ours, when you're starting a GPT, you just choose this plus button, and it says customize a version of ChatGPT for a specific purpose. You can see that I've got a variety of ones here that I've done, which we'll come back to. But if I just click the plus on here, it's going to open up this window that gives me really two parts to it. So on the left-hand side, you have a conversation with the GPT builder. And so this is where a lot of the designing happens. And so you're going to have conversations with the chatbots in there to help you create a GPT. On the right-hand side, you have the preview window. So on the preview window side, you can see what your GPT is actually able to do and test it out on that side. So creating on the left side, testing on the right side. If I was to start something here similar to the ones that I've done before, I can just say something like, I would like you to create a GPT that makes fitness plans for people. We can just start with that. A lot of times it'll start to create the initial structure of it, and then it might ask you more clarifying questions, so things that you might want to add in there, because obviously what I started with there is kind of vague. There's not a lot to that. I could get more and more specific as I work with the tool, and you'll actually see some of that with when Jeremy showcases one of his and I show one of mine. You can see that different GPTs are going to have different styles or ways that they approach things. They're going to have a different purpose. They're going to be honed for a specific task, and so then you can see here with the ChatGPT builder, I could continue to answer its questions. So the very first thing it will say is it wants me to name this, and it's saying that we should call it Fit Planner. You can go ahead with that if you want, or you can just choose to say, no, I would like it to be called, let's say, we'll just say like Gym Rat GPT is what we'll call it. Okay, so it updates the builder through the builder, and then it'll generate a profile picture, which same thing, same concept. You can either go with the one that they generate, or you can say that you don't like it, or this is what you want to change about it. Some of the images can tend to be a little bit more on the cartoonish side, or art style, where it doesn't really look necessarily professional. So depending on what you're going to use it for, you can change the picture. Um, you'll notice too, so as that's generating that profile picture, on the right-hand side, you're going to get that in the preview, that ChatGPT style. So if you're familiar with the regular interface of ChatGPT, it's going to have where you're conversing with it. You'll have some kind of quick link cards that you can click on to get started. And then you'll have like a tagline for your GPT. You can see there, so that's the gym rat one, which is actually kind of cool. So I'll just say no, and we'll go with that one. And then you can continue to speak with the GPT on the left-hand side, continue to make it do what you want it to do, and you'll be able to interact with it on this side. So I'm just going to leave it at that for now, and I'll shift it over to Jeremy, and Jeremy's going to show us his historical adventure guide. So if you're ready for that, Jeremy.
Yeah, great explanation too. I appreciate that. Yeah, right. So one of the first ones that I created, I've kind of been having some fun doing this too, was one, it was based upon this idea of a your own adventure style chat GPT that could guide students by placing them into the center of an event or an era of history, and then provide the students with some sort of context, some sort of story about that time period that they are exploring. So maybe they're studying it in a history class. And so the GPT that I created then is going to give students historically accurate content about people, places, events, culture, and use that then to help teach the student about that time period. While at the same time, the student is the center of that time period, and they are given tasks to do and choices that they have to make. So, just like David was showing you a little bit before, I started with the GPT builder. Now, what I wish this would do, I wish it would show us the history of all of the conversation that we had to get to this point. But I just basically started out by putting, I want to choose your own adventure, and then I want the student to be the center. And it went through and it was building this, and we kept asking each other questions and tweaking it until we got an iteration that we both liked. It gave it, as David showed, kind of the image and the name. And the other thing then, is just because you're done with it the first time doesn't mean that that's the way that it's going to be in the end, right? You're going to continue to iterate. You're going to continue to tweak and make those changes until you get it the way you want. Like, for example, the first one that I did, and I went and I tested it out, it was talking about some damning evidence against some person. And that I didn't think was quite appropriate, perhaps, like if an elementary kid was going to be doing this. So then I went back into the builder part of it, and I asked ChatGPT, I said, hey, let's make this so that it also applies to the grade level of student. So now when you do the historical adventure guide, right, you select a time period, and you also then select a grade level for the student that's going to participate in it. So that happens here on this left-hand side that you saw. And ultimately, what ChatGPT does is it takes all those conversations that you had in the builder phase, and it uses that to kind of craft its own instructions. So what you're seeing here on this left-hand side is nothing that I typed in to tell ChatGPT what to do. This is how it interpreted the conversations that we had in order to build it. So it's creating this choose your own adventure style thing from a historical era tailored to a grade level. It'll be more complex and the reading a little bit stronger for high school students than it would elementary students. And at each point within the particular adventure that you do, you're going to get 2 to 3 paragraphs worth of story. Then it's going to leave off at kind of like a point where a fork in the road happens and the student has to make a choice, either choice A or choice B. And then that will recur for about 5 to 6 iterations. Then in the end, you're going to get a reflective question. So the student then can tie together the information that they learned while going through the adventure. And each of these adventures are going to be unique. None of them are going to be the same. So if multiple different students do this, and even if they're in the same era, they're not going to necessarily wind up with the same story. So it gives a great chance to have some extended conversations with some of those. So I'm just going to test it out here really quick. Let's say that we're going to do the California Gold Rush. And I'm going to say I have a 7th grade student. So it's going to then, I'm looking at it here in this preview. Actually, you know what? Let's cut this part out right here. And I'm going to go back to the actual ChatGPT part and do it there, because then it'll be bigger on the screen. Just nod your head. I can see you that you understand what I'm saying. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's test this out here and let's pick an era of history. We're going to select the California Gold Rush and we're going to choose for it to be at a 7th grade level. So this historical adventure guide then is saying, hey, that's great. Welcome to this time period. And then I didn't tell it to do this either, by the way, but I noticed this starting to happen with ones that I've done. It decided to call the story part of it, chapters. And I think that's great. It kind of then builds that, hey, chapter 1 of our story. It's like the beginning, and then it continues into chapter 2. It's putting it into 1848, which is kind of like right at the beginning of that California gold rush. People are moving out to California because they've heard about this. That's starting, maybe a better year would have been 1849, but we're on like the precipice of it here, and we're going to be some of those early adopters here of the California gold rush. And it's talking about they're heading out west to finding gold. It's going to be a tough journey. Which do you want to do, choice A or choice B? Do you want to convince your family or advise caution? And you know what, we're adventurous, so I'm just going to type in A, and then it's going to continue the story. You could see that it's chapter 2 now. We're setting out for California. And then you continue through this. It's giving you information here about it. Do you want to take the sea voyage or do you want to take the overland? Well, we're going to rough it over the land here. And then it would continue to go on here. Now, I know David pointed out a little bit earlier too, ChatGPT-4 is a paid feature. And at $20 a month currently, I don't think that schools can afford to pay for every student to have a subscription. But how this could be used is if you had a teacher that had a subscription, and the teacher was logged in and put a group of 3 or 4 students in front of this particular adventure here, and then go through the process, that would actually create a really cool situation then where you have to have the students, as they're going through this adventure, when they get to the point where they make their choice, they now have to have a discussion amongst them before they decide what choice of action they want to take, which is going to just, I think, bring home some of that engagement even more, and it's going to really do a lot to advance that story. And so as you can see here, you go through this part and then you get to the end, it'll ask some reflection questions. But I think it gives you a pretty good example of the type of thing that you can create here. And I think one of the last things that I want to point out here as I bring David back in to this as well, is that I required no specialized training in order to create this. Like any teacher that can enter a prompt into ChatGPT could really create their own GPT by using that builder. Is that kind of been your experience too?
Yeah, because when you're asking it to build this for you, it's really no different than when I've interacted with ChatGPT, just in a general sense of like asking it for things or asking it questions. It's just that with the GPT builder, we have a specific thing in mind that
Right.
that we want to accomplish with that GPT, and
And I think
so
that's kind of, oh, go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, that's right. And so we just had you kind of approach it from a different angle, I would say. Like, it's kind of weird actually, because like you still are thinking in a creator sense. Like you're still,
Hmm.
when I was building it, I was still thinking like, okay, what do I want this thing to do? as opposed to just asking ChatGPT general questions, or having it make a lesson plan for me or something like that.
Right, and I think it's okay to let your, like, stream of consciousness flow out onto the page because, it's gonna constantly adapt and adjust to what you're trying to tell it to do, and, it's this machine. It is not a live human being. It's not gonna get mad at you if you tell it you don't like something, and it's not gonna get crabby if you tell it to tweak something for, like, the 13th time, you know? It doesn't think that way, right? That's not how the system works. But I think you hammered on another great point too, is that I think the more specific of a task that you can tailor the created GPT to, I think the better your product is going to be and the happier you're going to be with it in the end.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just when you're interacting with it, even if you're starting from scratch, it's great because the GPT will continuously ask clarifying questions. And so then if there's things that I hadn't thought about before, something that GPT responds with or asks me might spark something else that
Hmm.
I want to do with that GPT that I'm creating. So
Yeah, and actually, what I'm going to do here in the show notes here when we post it, I saved a document here of the history of my conversation when I built one. That'll it's called the Brain Dump Study Buddy. And if people are interested, I could talk about that later. But I saved the conversation so that you could see kind of like how the process went and the questions that I would ask and what my thoughts were and how it changed. And I didn't like this, but let's do this instead. So that'll be something that I link in the notes if you kind of want to see how that thought process breaks out into building it. I think it's kind of a cool little tool as well. Awesome. So I think you want to show us one here that is going to be a little bit more useful for teachers to use as they're integrating standards and adopting lessons to particular standards here. So I'm going to give you the floor here again, and take it away.
okay, so shifting a little bit away from Jeremy's example, one of the things when I was creating a GPT, I wanted to see how it would respond to making an education standard catalog. The whole idea behind it was essentially to make it kind of a repository uh, of the GPT knowing all of the standards. And being in Minnesota, we obviously like that would be a large focus. So I did ask it to pull those and focus on those. But I also played around with getting it to pull in standards from anywhere, because the idea behind this is kind of this first question that you see there. If you need a lesson plan or a unit for a specific standard, I wanted to have teachers be able to just write that in here and see how it responds. So, like, if I have the standards up, one of the things that I played around with at first was just giving it the code. So if I wanted a standards, and this is standard 2, this is world history 9th through 12th grade. If I want, I can just say I need a lesson plan for a specific standard, right? Kind of starting from scratch. And it's going to respond to me and ask what standard subject area grade level would I like to focus on. Okay, so if I want, I can try to just be vague at first, and I can say I need a lesson plan for 9.4.1.2 Minnesota Social Studies. And part of this, you just want to kind of see what does it do, right? How does it respond? So it's going to tell me that the standard typically covers the following themes. So this is public policy and governance, right? So one thing about this is that by being vague like that, we got it, I guess, a hallucination or incorrect response. So that's where a lot of the honing comes in. So like when you're creating this and going through the process, thinking back to the beginning of the video, where you have the preview and you have the chat going on when you're designing it, you do have to continually hone what it is you're looking for. And I have found that there was plenty of times where I would ask it to do something and it still wouldn't do the thing that I had in mind, right? So sometimes how things currently stand, you may have an idea that is a little bit more grand than its capabilities at the time. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, another way we could approach it is I could say, I need this lesson plan, but I'm gonna feed it a little bit more information. And that's really an important thing about when you're interacting with this. You don't want to be vague because it's only kind of to your detriment of what response you're gonna get. So the more information you can feed it, the better. And so we'll try it this way. Basically, what we're looking for with this is now we're trying to see what does it give us in terms of the response compared to the hallucination that we first had there. So we'll try this one. So this focuses on historical inquiry. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Then it's going to start to produce a lesson plan. Obviously, the big thing here is then, and this is a unit, it looks like that it's producing. It gives me 5 days of things that we could do. But the big thing here is once you get it, obviously you know still look through that and see if that's what you want to do to meet that standard. Now, you could do this with ChatGPT in the normal sense. You could ask it that same thing. And so one of the things that through this process that I kind of asked myself is how can I make something that differentiates itself from just the standard GPT? Because realistically, you could go to 3.5. I could put that same prompt in, and it's gonna produce that for me. What I tried to play around with a little bit was when I was in the creation process, I tried to ask it to pull in videos and media from places that would meet the standard. So we can try it. I'll just ask. I'll say, can you give me a video for this unit? And we'll just see what it says here. Okay, so right off the bat, it's going to tell me that I need to find existing videos and ideas for creating a custom video, and then tools for video creation. So, and that's not really what I'm looking for, right? So I could always say, how about providing a YouTube link that matches the standard? In the creation process too, what I tried to do in the GPT builder was I asked it if it could pull things from Khan Academy and YouTube, so that what I did previously when I was working with the preview was I was asking it for, like, sometimes I would ask it for units for the entire year, and then I asked it to provide video links for all of those units, right, to accompany those lessons. This one does say that it found a video on YouTube titled "The Powerful Inquiry Lesson for History Class." So you could always check that out and see what that does here. So we'll open that. And it does direct you to a link. Now, another thing, and this continues to be the honing process, I guess. There was times where it provided videos to me, links for videos, and they weren't really that great. they were, like they would be ones that only had like 100 views. There were some from other countries as well. So that's always kind of the thing as you're going through this creation process, is constantly testing it out, constantly seeing what it's providing, and then making changes within the builder itself. So there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of checking to see if it's doing what you want. And again, like I said, I constantly ask myself, like, how can I make this catalog worthwhile for teachers to go to, that rather than going to the regular ChatGPT, they're going to go to this because it's much more focused for them and provides more. It's more of a focused application rather than just the kind of wide-ranging ChatGPT.
It's from the AI educator, Dan Fitzpatrick, who has started to pull together GPTs that have been created by teachers for teachers. And so this link will also be put into the show notes that we have when it gets posted. And you'll be able to see there's all these different ones that have been created and posted to his page. And there's a button on there that allows you to be able to submit them. And you can see I'm just kind of scrolling through here, some different ones. Maybe I'm looking for one in particular and what page that would be on. And I'm not finding it yet, or maybe I went by it. Anyway, the historical adventure guide was my point. That got posted to one of these pages. I don't remember which one it was. So that could be a spot where you could go to. If you have this subscription, you could see that most of them are available with a free, or you're able to use them for free as long as you pay for ChatGPT 4. And I think that is about all that we were going to show for today. Yeah. Am I right with that, or do you have other things?
Nope, that's it. Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay.
How do you?
Additionally, if people want, I did also will add this link into it. It shows you that conversation I was talking about, building the Brain Dump Study Buddy, including a couple of different tests that I did with it. I'm a social studies guy. I know David is too, and I taught a lot of political science and the Constitution, so I kind of tested it out using that myself. But what I'm not very good in is math. But my daughter, she's studying college algebra. She's a freshman this year, and she had a test on studying exponential functions. And I asked her to try to give Brain Dump Study Buddy a try. And you could see she went, and if you're interested to see what she asked it, it's all linked here in this other Google Doc. But basically she went through back and forth about 10 or 12 times and probably spent over a half an hour just doing like retrieval practice, brain dump activity. And a long time later, said she's doing great. She took the test, got 40 out of 40 on it. So not just pretty proud of her, but proud that I think that the Brain Dump Study Buddy might actually work. But after some feedback from her, I even went through and did a little bit of rebuilding with it, like you alpha test, you beta test, and you go back and you continue to go into that builder and you hone it, like David was saying, until you get, something that you think is even better. So, all right, thanks for tuning in to Integrate This EdTech. We're glad to have shared some valuable insights with you for your interactive classrooms. Special thanks to my co-host, David Berner, and for all of our listeners and viewers for joining this digital exploration. My name is Jeremy Mikla. Until next time, keep integrating, innovating, and shaping the future of education. Happy teaching.
And don't forget to subscribe for the latest in EdTech and join our socials for ongoing discussions. Your thoughts and questions are always welcome. See you in the next episode.